In today's video, I'm going to tell you about the 3-act structure. The 3-act structure is the most common story structure model that is used by many professional writers in the industry. This narrative technique is built on the idea that a cohesive story must have a beginning, middle, and end. In the 3-act structure, the beginning is known as the setup and includes the exposition, the inciting incident, and plot point 1. The middle is known as the confrontation and includes the rising action, the midpoint, and plot point 2. Finally, the end is known as the resolution and includes the pre-climax, the climax, and a denouement. If your goal is to create your own comic, manga, or webtoon, then it is very important to learn how to apply the 3-act structure to your own work. The 3-act structure is a model used in narrative fiction that divides the story into 3 parts. These parts, also known as acts, are known as the setup, confrontation, and resolution. The origin of the 3-act structure can be traced back to ancient Greece with poems written by the legendary philosopher Aristotle. According to Aristotle, each story act should be bridged by a story beat that sends the narrative into a different direction. He believed that stories should be a continuous chain of cause and effect story beats. In other words, each scene should lead into what happens next in the story. Nowadays, the 3-act structure is used by mangaka, novelists, and screenwriters around the world to plot stories of different genres. The benefit of using the 3-act structure is every scene in your story will start and end with a clear purpose. Also, if you find yourself stuck, the 3-act structure provides a clear roadmap of where your story needs to go. Act 1 typically lasts for the first quarter of your story. Think of this phase as the introduction to your world, characters, and plot. Exposition is about setting the stage. During this introductory period, you need to get your reader accustomed to your story's main character, your protagonist's everyday life, and your protagonist's goal. The beginning of your story does not need to be perfect by any means. The purpose of the exposition is to establish a status quo, or an existing state of affairs regarding social and political issues. Your reader should get a glimpse at what your main character's everyday life looks like. For example, in chapter 1 of the manga Shokugeki no Soma, we are introduced to Soma Yukihira and his family restaurant. We are shown what his everyday life looks like as a high school student who works as a chef part-time. These mundane scenes are important for developing your protagonist's personality and perspective on life. An inciting incident is the catalyst that sets your protagonist's adventure into motion. Without an inciting incident, there is no story. Think of it this way: an inciting incident introduces a way for your protagonist to change their current situation or achieve their goal. This opportunity often takes the form of an adventure or a journey that your character can go on. An inciting incident should disrupt your main character's everyday life and present an opportunity that will make your character want to leave their old life behind. To write a strong inciting incident, consider these questions. What would it take for my protagonist to feel satisfied with their life? Does my protagonist have any fears or flaws? How could the events in my story force my protagonist to confront their fears or their flaws? Another name for the inciting incident is the call to adventure. The purpose of this phase is to push your protagonist out of their comfort zone. By facing trials and tribulations, they will grow as a character. Will your main character rise to the challenge, or will they resist the call to adventure? It is important to remember that going on a journey will have consequences for your main character, and it may be dangerous to those around them. In the manga series Bleach, the inciting incident is when the hollow Fishbone D attacks the Kurosaki clinic. In order to save his family from being murdered, the protagonist, Ichigo Kurosaki, decides to borrow the power of the Soul Reapers. This incident marks the beginning of Ichigo's adventure as a substitute Soul Reaper. After the inciting incident, it is time for your story to really begin. Plot point 1 represents your main character's decision to engage with whatever action the inciting incident has created. In other words, this is when they heed the call to adventure. In some stories, the inciting incident and plot point 1 occur at the same time. For example, in the manga Dr. Stone, the inciting incident is when everyone on Earth suddenly turns to stone. Immediately after, we see the main characters waking up in their new reality, kicking off the adventure in this mysterious new world. Think of plot point 1 as the springboard that will launch your protagonist into Act 2 of the story. Rising action is the part of your story where the main character's journey begins to take form. It is also the section where your protagonist will first encounter obstacles, roadblocks, and trials. During this phase, your protagonist will learn about their new surroundings and begin to understand the challenges that they have to face. This is also the part of your story where you want to introduce secondary characters, the primary antagonist, and an overarching conflict. As your main character learns more about the path that they must take, they will begin to adapt and change and grow as a character. This character development is necessary for giving them a better chance at achieving their goals. An example of rising action can be seen in the manga series Attack on Titan. Up until this point, humanity only had to fear pure titans. The inciting incident of the series is when specialized titans, specifically the armored titan and the colossal titan, destroy the walls that kept humanity safe. The rising action is the scene where Eren and his friends decide to become trained soldiers in order to keep moving and increase their chances of survival. As the name suggests, the midpoint takes place during the middle of the story. In many stories, a significant event like a major defeat occurs during this stage. Consider these questions when planning out the midpoint of your story. What must happen for your protagonist's goal to be threatened? How can you make your main character grow from this situation? The midpoint of your story should be the time when you reaffirm your protagonist's goals. Despite this setback, they continue to endure and grow as a character. This character development will help prepare them for their upcoming challenges and will allow them to succeed in their quest. Chapter 59 at Death Note marks the midpoint of the manga. During this chapter, the protagonist Light has just defeated the main antagonist of the series, L. This is the moment Light has been waiting for. With L out of the way, there should be nothing standing in his way from achieving his goal. This isn't the case though. Just when Light thinks the battle is over, two more opposing forces are introduced. Light realizes that he hasn't won yet and must deal with these two antagonists before he is able to become the god of the new world. Plot point 2 can be seen as the aftermath of your story's midpoint. Just when your protagonists thought they were close to achieving their goal, they are thrown off course. It may take time for your main character to recover. They should reflect on what went wrong and come to terms with their mistakes. In doing so, they will take on a more proactive role and change their approach. By adapting to the situation, your protagonist will gain new tools that will allow them to try again against the antagonist. An example of plot point 2 can be seen in the manga series Kimetsu no Yaiba. Plot point 2 begins during the Mugen Train arc when Tanjiro faces his first major defeat. Until this point, he naively believed that he would be able to defeat any demon and protect his friends and family. After Rengoku and Tanjiro lose to Akaza, Tanjiro realizes just how weak he really is, and how much more he needs to grow in order to keep his sister safe. The lessons that he learns from this battle stick with him throughout the series. They push him towards becoming a stronger hero capable of defeating Muzan, the Demon King. Act 3 is the final section of your story. Traditionally, Act 3 should only encompass 1/4 of your story. This phase is where your final battle and resolution will take place. It is important to stick the landing with the ending of your story because you don't want to leave your readers dissatisfied. The pre-climax is the moment in your story that is leading up to your story's big moment. As the story's protagonist has been preparing to defeat the main antagonist, the antagonist has also been preparing to put an end to your hero. This stage of your story begins with the final clash between your protagonist and your antagonist. This is the moment where we will witness the antagonist's true strength. Remember, all of this time we have been following the main character on their journey, and now they are finally being put to the test. Even if most readers know that the hero will win in the end, we should have some doubts about how the clash will play out. In many stories, your protagonist should realize that the antagonist is stronger than they thought, catching them off guard. This can be seen in Avatar: The Last Airbender when Aang is overpowered by Fire Lord Ozai for a majority of the battle. Even though we have spent 4 seasons watching Aang grow, seeing him being thrown around and overwhelmed makes us remember how powerful the antagonist really is. Think of a manga series like Devilman. The protagonist, Akira Fudo, gains the power of a powerful demon to stop Satan from starting the apocalypse. As the viewer, we believe that Akira might be able to defeat this opposing force because we have spent so much time with them. We watched him train, grow stronger, and defeat many different kinds of enemies. It's easy to forget just how powerful the main antagonist really is. During the final clash, we can finally see the difference between them. Despite being the main character that we have followed all of this time, he is unable to defeat the main antagonist. This creates tension for the audience and reminds us that the protagonist is not invincible. The climax signifies the final moments of a story's overarching conflict. This is the part of the story where your protagonist is able to overcome their adversary. It is important to remember that a climax is usually contained to a single scene. If you are thinking of the 3-act structure as a graph, then the climax is the highest peak of your story. This is the big moment that your reader has been waiting for. It is very important to make sure this moment is worthwhile and exciting for your reader. You want the payoff to feel worth it and satisfying. The last thing that you want is someone to say that your story was underwhelming or anticlimactic. Finally, we have arrived at the end of the story. The denouement is the moment after the conflict in your story is resolved. You can think of this stage as the cool down of your exercise. If your protagonist was not able to achieve their goal during the climax, then they should achieve it during the denouement. This phase should also fulfill any promises made to the reader earlier in the story, tie up significant loose ends, remind the reader about the theme of the story, and release any tension built up during the pre-climax and climax of the story. You can also think of this step as the winding down part of your story, where in theory, everyone lives happily ever after. An example of a denouement can be seen in the final chapter of Naruto. The Great Ninja War has finally ended, Naruto saved his best friend, and he finally achieved his dream of becoming Hokage. The story ends by showing the reader a glimpse into the character's future where they have become respectable adults, gotten married, and had children. This moment is a payoff for the reader and creates a satisfying conclusion. You want your reader to feel like the story is now over and the characters will go on to live their lives in peace. If you wrote your denouement correctly, your reader should feel content saying goodbye to the beloved characters that they have come to know and love. Remember, you are not required to use a story structure like the 3-act structure in your own work. There are many successful stories that use alternative plot structures, including The Hero's Journey, Dan Harmon's Story Circle, and Freytag's Pyramid. There are some stories that don't even follow a narrative structure. Some stories like Shingeki no Kyojin and Higurashi When They Cry break the rules and tell a story that is not in chronological order. In doing so, they are able to create a world that is clouded in mystery. Hopefully you were able to get some value out of this video. If you did, please leave this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. Leave a comment down below telling us about your favorite comic, manga, or webtoon story. I will be responding to every comment on today's video. Remember, you can support me by following me on all of my social media accounts. I post all of my finished artwork over on Instagram and Twitter. As always, keep creating everyone. I will see you all in the next one.